and welcome back to Community Hotline. I'm Monica Weitzel. We're here in Gresham at MetroEast Community Media. And now for our second and last guest of the evening, we're going to be talking with the Southeast Uplift Neighborhood Coalition. And representing the coalition, we have Ann DeFay, who's the Executive Director. Thanks for being here, Ann.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. I recently, well, within the last few months, met one of your staff members and learned a little bit about Southeast Uplift, and would love to find out some more. And there's a lot of neighborhood associations in the area, but a neighborhood coalition is something different, correct?
Correct.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you do, a little bit about the mission, and maybe the history of the organization?
Sure. So there's 95 neighborhood associations in the city of Portland.
That's a lot.
And they're formally recognized by the city of Portland. They have standing on land use matters and other issues of livability that affect the residents and businesses in those areas. They originally began to understand that they needed to band together to have some staff. So they're all volunteers there, and they are almost all of them registered nonprofit corporations in the state of Oregon.
Oh,
but they are all volunteer, and all volunteer needs eventually some staff. So we have now 7 coalitions, and they're geographically organized just like the neighborhood associations are. Our coalition covers an area of mostly inner southeast Portland, but also some of inner northeast Portland.
Okay.
And we provide services to 20 different neighborhood associations.
Wow.
So we are the largest of the coalitions.
You are? Oh,
yes.
I didn't realize that. So that's a pretty large geographic area there,
It
too.
is quite large, yes.
So, for example, I live in the Concordia neighborhood. Would that be part of Southeast Uplift?
No.
That would be just outside of it, probably, just further north. And
Yeah.
so there's a different one that would cover that. So tell me, what exactly do you do? So you provide support to the neighborhood associations. So if people in the neighborhood associations that have questions, issues, they want, they just are not sure how to go forward and deal with a particular situation, is that what you're there for, to help them work through that?
That would be one of the things, absolutely, yeah.
And I imagine there's a whole bunch more.
Yeah. I think that our most needed capacity is flexibility. So we respond to what the neighborhood associations need within their mission and our mission. So there is structure and there is some organization. Most typically, for instance, land use issues are a big one. We have a land use planner on staff.
Oh, okay.
And so that is a person who the neighborhood associations and residents can come to if they have issues around a land use, questions in particular around a land use issue in their neighborhood association, which can be very highly technical and difficult to understand if you don't know the jargon and you don't know the rules and you don't know the players.
And easy to lose whatever it is that what's important to you if you don't know how to deal with it. So anything from boundary lines to they're putting in a shop in our neighborhood close to the school that we don't want, that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, changing zoning. Somebody is knocking down a house and people are worried about whether it's
going to go in there. Is it zoned for business or is it commercial and residential use, whatever? Yeah.
It can be as simple as they're going to add another floor to a house and we want to know, is that legal? Is that, is there anything we can have?
They want to build another structure on their property and it's going to
someone's building a 5-story,
Okay. So the help that you provide, is there a charge to the neighborhood for that service? No. Well, that's great. That's a good thing.
We are funded by the city of Portland to provide these services to the neighborhood associations.
So you don't do fundraising and that kind of thing. You're funded by the city to provide.
We are primarily funded by the city. We do some fundraising for activities that are outside our contract with the city.
Okay.
So we are, for instance, forbidden from using the city funds to sue the city.
Oh, I can kind of understand that. Yeah, that's pretty funny, actually. But, that kind of makes sense. Now, you also give out grants, is that correct? Or you administer grants? I read something about a neighborhood small grants. Was that what it's called? Yeah.
And that program we administer for the city of Portland, and each of the coalitions administers a similar program for their area. And this is funds that come to us from the city And the idea is that it's a small grant program, so it's to get funds out into the neighborhoods where people may know these sort of small grassroots projects that if they could just have a little bit of money, they can really do something wonderful.
So we're talking about like a community garden, that kind of thing? Would that be something that would fall under that? Because I know that's such a big thing now, people having their community gardens. Can you give me some other examples of grants that have been administered?
Yeah, they range, there's a wide range. Some of them are community parties, picnics, a big, gigantic,
like
fun
a big block party or
summer
something?
thing, or, there have been theater shows around issues of interest or concern in the neighborhood. One of my favorite was in 2013, Eastside Village PDX, which is a nonprofit group that is working to establish aging in place communities for elders and disabled folks in Portland. This was this is an organization that is active across the country. This was their first foray into Portland, and they got one of our grants and they used it to develop their outreach materials and do all their organizing. And they now have active villages not only in Portland, but even out in some of the suburban areas. So
like out in East County out here, perhaps?
I don't know about East County.
That's next, I bet.
Milton, I've lost track of how far they've gone. But we were able to provide this seed money that was a total catalyst to this wonderful project.
That's a good deal.
Yeah.
Well, I know that some organizations or some communities have like a tool library or something like that. Would that kind of thing sort of fall under that?
They do. We have both a tool library and a kitchen share library.
Is that, I mean, in one of the neighborhood, through your neighborhood association? Oh, darn. I think that's something a lot of people don't know even exists, because that's a great idea. So who can get it? Does it have to be a nonprofit that applies for those grants?
They either need to be a nonprofit or to have fiscal sponsorship with a 501c3, or they can apply to have fiscal sponsorship through Southeast Uplift.
Oh, okay. So you could be the nonprofit that provided this fiscal sponsorship.
And we are sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So if people wanted information on that, they could just go on your website and find out more. When is that the timing for those grants? When do you give those out?
So the grant process is in motion right now. The grants are due on January 5th. We have
coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, pretty soon. We've held 2 workshops to help people figure out, if their idea is suitable, might be funded.
Don't waste your time if it's totally out of
how they could write it.
Yeah.
Those are over, but we have a program manager who is running that program, Kelly Fedderson, who is available to talk to anyone who has any questions.
Great.
Go on our website. You can find her contact information and more information about the grants, examples of past projects, all the paperwork you need to fill out.
Do the other coalitions have the same time period for their grants? So,
pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. I think there is one that is doing it on a different time frame. But
check with their. I imagine if you go to the City of Portland website, would they be able to direct you to it? Okay.
They should.
You did bring a few pictures, and I think I'd like to take a look at those there now, if we could, and you can tell me what we're looking at that were from your. From the Southeast Uplift work. Now, do you know what this is?
I do.
Okay, can you tell us? Because I have no clue what it looks like a karaoke night or something.
That was actually our MC of our Knock Knock It's Your Neighbor, our first annual event. And that is Amalia Alarcon de Morris, who is the director of the Office of Neighborhood Involvement program for the City of Portland. She's also an actor and a very funny person, and she was,
Is this all part of this?
And that's the photo booth at
Oh.
that same event.
Oh, fun. Knock, knock, it's your neighbor? Is
Knock,
that,
knock, it's your neighbor.
So is it all about like different scenarios, and was it vignettes and things?
Yes, it's a storytelling event, and people submit stories. It's a juried competition to
be part of that.
To be part of it.
Oh, how fun. That sounds like a blast.
Very fun.
That sounds like a blast. Now, this is the grant application.
That is it.
Okay, so that will people look for that when they go to the website. If
Right.
they have an idea, and if they don't, think they need more time, then they can look at it for next year, right?
Exactly.
And when do you start the
Generally
process?
around November.
Oh,
so
okay,
it's
okay.
it's tied to a degree to are the funds, whether the funds will be available every year. The question
It's different.
is up for review in the city budget process. But
So in some years it may be more than others, more money
Yes.
than others.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now you also do some advocacy work, is that right?
We do.
And what exactly does that entail?
So it varies depending. There are larger and smaller advocacy efforts active at any given time in our coalition area. So it could be a small effort that a neighborhood association is working on, and they want maybe some staff help on where do we direct this letter, who would be the best target for this campaign, that sort of thing. So that would be sort of lower level staff support. And then we have coalition-wide advocacy efforts, and these are less frequent, much bigger.
Much more, affect more people? And give me
Absolutely.
an example of what you're talking about, like the big and the small.
So we have a couple of ongoing advocacy, coalition-wide advocacy efforts that are pretty big. One of them is in reference to the demolition question. So there's been a huge uptick in the number of home demolitions in the city of Portland with the improvement in the economy. And so people have money, and people are buying and building, and people are starting to tear down old houses and
put up fourplexes and apartments.
Well,
row houses,
I mean, it varies, but
not that that's always a bad thing. It's not.
It's not always a bad thing. There were some very strong concerns about. There were demolitions happening, suddenly starting up all over the city, and neighbors were finding that the folks doing the demolitions weren't handling asbestos and lead appropriately. There were
there were safety issues.
There were safety issues, and there was no established recourse for neighbors.
Really?
So, and very little information, and the city was not at that point was not interested in getting very involved in it, and there were a lot of what, in fact, the regulators themselves called regulations that didn't pass the smell test.
One way of putting it, I suppose.
And so we
Something
came together.
stinks here, huh?
Yeah, and so it was a perfect example of where we as an organization look for those areas where people of often very divergent opinions can find common ground. And around the safety issues and around having regulations that are clear and understandable and fairly enforced, everybody can,
Yeah. If you know what to expect, you know what the rules are, then you can work with them. But if you don't, and you get it sprung on you at the last minute, or you have to backpedal and try to fix something you didn't know you were going to have to, then I can understand why that could be an issue.
And we worked with the other coalitions and neighborhoods across the city, and we are right now, the process is starting to get to a win point, actually.
Nice.
And regulations are being changed. The city is working much more closely with the state regulators of the hazardous waste, and we have a clarified response process for folks who have questions.
Good.
It's been a very successful effort, and we're real proud of it.
So that's something that can stand probably for years.
Yes.
Right. Good deal. Good deal. That's
It
wonderful.
was good work.
What about some of the smaller things? Do you ever have like just one person who has an issue and they go to their neighborhood association who doesn't know what to do, so they go to you and you are able to help them? I mean, just little one-on-one things?
Little one-on-one things we do also, yes, absolutely. And it depends. We have a little basket of resources for those kinds of things. Sometimes,
so maybe if they can help themselves, you can show them how to do that.
Obviously, that's the best. We do the city has a contract with Resolutions Northwest, which is a mediation and facilitation organization, and we can access that contract and get help for. So if it's a neighbor-on-neighbor kind of dispute,
I bet that would be a lot of what that would be, huh?
That's what springs to mind. Most common of those single issue.
The dog that's barking all night long, or the the awful rusted cars in their yard or whatever, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and so we can direct them to Resolutions Northwest if necessary. We can direct them to, for instance, the nuisance inspectors in the city.
Okay.
We have a good grab bag of resources for those kinds of things.
Good,
so.
good. So what else do we need to know about Southeast Uplift and what you do there at the coalition?
So we are essentially an organization that works to promote civic engagement and develop civic engagement, which is really about helping people create and support and nurture and grow their own communities in ways that are going to give them what we all want, is a place to live where we are going to feel safe, where that's open and inclusive, that's got a nice diverse population, that's vital and livable.
And it has all the things that you need for a good and happy life.
Exactly.
I think that's
remember I said flexible? And
yeah,
we have this
yeah. And that probably changes all the
So-
time. Yeah, I can see that.
Sometimes it's a tree, and sometimes it's a street, or a stop sign, or a sidewalk.
Business or
yeah.
yeah. So the thing like the knock knock, it's your neighbor. That's is that like just it's a community building kind of event, right?
It is a community building event. It's also a fundraiser. We've used it to raise funds
yeah,
for our creative grant, our small creative grant program, which is
Okay.
another grant program. But it's primarily a community builder and a way to help people start thinking. The goal of Knock Knock It's Your Neighbor is the best way to be secure and safe and happy in your neighborhood is to know your neighbor. And so
And that's so true.
Yeah.
I mean, I have some great neighbors, and they've helped me, and I hopefully have helped them at times when we need it, and that makes a huge difference in how you feel about where you live.
And that was the theme of our first Knock Knock It's Your Neighbor.
So
is
you have
those
another one coming up,
stories.
or have
So
you
we
only
had
had
a
one?
second one, and that one was essentially misunderstandings of your neighbors. So when did you think that person was stealing your cat or stealing a neighbor's cat, and really they'd just taken it in because they thought it was a stray?
And they were going to call and find out. Yeah.
So it was misunderstandings, miscommunications, and that was our
And
second one.
where do you hold those? Where have you?
The first one was on Hawthorne at the Baghdad Theater,
Oh.
and the second one was at a community club or comedy club, Helium.
Oh, okay. Yeah, on Hawthorne.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we look for places that are good,
Right in the
comfortable, and-
neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
That's great. Do you have any other fundraisers or anything coming up in the near future?
Nothing in particular at this point, no.
Okay. Well, we're just about out of time. So anything else that you think that we should know that's important to know? Or what do you think is the most important thing as a neighbor that you should be aware of, just in anybody's neighborhood or community?
The Neighborhood Association is meant to be a grassroots organization, and it's as good as the people who join it. So get out and join it. You really can make a difference, and you really can create and give so much added value to your neighborhood.
That is very well said. Thank you, Ann. That's great. No, I totally agree. I've been to enough neighborhood association meetings. I know that it's amazing what you can do when you work together for the same cause. So
Yeah.
that's great. Well, thanks very much for being on here. And if people have more questions, or they would like to apply for a grant, or want some advocacy help, and they're in your area, they can go to your website.
Absolutely.
And if not, you can call the city, or I'm sure probably somebody at Southeast Uplift can tell them exactly where they need to go to get the resources.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
You're
Thanks so much.
You bet. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks for watching Community Hotline tonight. I hope you've learned something. I know I have. And if you want to be a good neighbor, then you just pay attention to some of the things you heard tonight. It's all about getting to know your neighbors and helping to make the community a better place. I'm Monica Weitzel. We'll see you here again next week.